Governing Texas, Chapter 10, Local Government. Why local government matters. Ordinarily, Texans give local government little attention as long as the trash is picked up and the potholes are repaired. Two recent emergencies, however, show the great importance of local government to the well-being of Texans. One crisis involved Hurricane Harvey, which made landfall on August 25, 2017. As a Category 4 hurricane near Rockport, Texas, the storm moved around southern Texas for days, in the process dropping more than 20 trillion gallons of rain across Texas and Louisiana, enough water to supply New York City's water needs for over 5 decades. Some estimated that $97 billion in property was destroyed, and other loss estimates were even higher. By September 1st, 2017, the Texas Division of Emergency Management estimated 185,149 houses were damaged or destroyed, and 364,000 persons had registered for FEMA assistance. At that time, 42,399 persons were in shelters, and FEMA had already distributed 1,900,000 meals in Texas. Houston, the largest city in Texas and the fourth largest city in the United States with a population of 2.3 million, was flooded. At Cedar Bayou, on the outskirts of Houston, 51.88 inches of rain were recorded just under 5 days. This was a new record for the heaviest rainfall in the continental United States. During flooding, local government was inundated by rescue calls. There were cries for help from people flooded in their homes, cars, businesses, hospitals, and nursing homes. But somehow Houston and the surrounding area managed with a relatively small loss of life. Given the overwhelming nature of the flooding, one estimate was that 107 persons died in the United States as a result of Harvey. In 2005, over 1,800 people died as a result of Hurricane Katrina. The combined governmental response, coupled with the volunteer work of private citizens, meant the response to Harvey was generally viewed favorably. A poll of 1,200 registered Texas voters in February 2018 found that 61% of Texans approved of the local government response to Harvey and only 11% disapproved. Houston's Mayor Sylvester Turner was criticized for not ordering an evacuation of Houston. Governor Abbott had said that if he were living in the area, he would leave and head north. However, Turner and other local officials insisted it was best to stay put rather than evacuate, and most people did not leave. In 2005, Hurricane Rita headed toward Houston, and 3.7 million people left the Houston area. The evacuation was a disaster. Interstate 45 turned into a 100-mile parking lot. Cars ran out of fuel. No gasoline was available along the interstate. Dozens of people died in accidents, in bus fires, and heat stroke. Hurricane Rita changed course, and Houston was not severely hit. The evacuation was far more harmful than the storm. It is likely that Turner's decision not to evacuate Houston in 2017 was the correct one. The second crisis that showed the importance of local government in Texas was the coronavirus of 2020. As with Hurricane Harvey, it was local government that occupied the front lines in the effort to protect public well-being. One of the state's leaders in responding to the pandemic was County Judge Clay Jenkins of Dallas County, who had previously had experience with outbreaks of the West Nile and Ebola viruses over the opposition of the other officials in the county. Jenkins worked to limit bars and restaurants to takeout and delivery. In Dallas County, he also worked with other county judges to implore Governor Abbott to close schools and restrict operation of bars and restaurants on a statewide basis. The next day, Abbott closed schools, banned dine-in service, and limited gatherings to 10 people. When Abbott did not issue a statewide shelter in place, Jenkins did so for Dallas County, which was followed quickly by Bexar, Travis, and Harris, and then by other counties and some cities. Such actions to control the COVID-19 were taken by county judges and some mayors under their powers under the Texas Disaster Act of 1975, which recognized that local officials needed extraordinary powers to deal with crisis situations in their communities. The actions of local officials to limit Texans' exposure to the coronavirus no doubt prevented many infections and saved numerous lives. Local government is important to Texans. It was a local governmental decision, likely a wise one, that prevented the evacuation of the Houston area. Local government played a major role in the rescue operations caused by the flooding disaster, and it had a major role in feeding and sheltering the victims of Harvey. Likewise, it was local government that first acted to limit social contacts, which would have exacerbated the coronavirus contagion. As noted in the introduction to Chapter 1, it was the action of local officials that prevented widespread contagion when they canceled the South by Southwest Festival in early March 2020. It was also local government that was directly involved in planning the need for expanded hospital services to deal with the COVID-19 illness. Local government does not get the same level of media attention that state and national government receive, but crises such as Hurricane Harvey and the COVID-19 pandemic emphasize the vast importance of local government to our lives. County government in Texas. Local government institutions play a major role in Texas. There are more than 5,147 general-purpose local governments, on an average of about 20 per county, which provide water, electricity, and sewer services, as well as police protection and public education. All but 2 states have governmental units as counties or parishes, but Texas has 254 counties, more than any other state. County government in Texas is primarily a way of governing rural areas. Because Texas is so vast with huge areas that are sparsely populated, county government remains an important aspect of local government. As was discussed in Chapter 2, however, the Texas Constitution places numerous restrictions on government, and many of those are restrictions on counties. Indeed, in Texas, counties have constricted governmental powers because they lack much of the power of self-government. They often function primarily as an administrative arm of the state government. Here's the vocabulary word. What are the functions of county government? The main functions of Texas county government are construction and maintenance of county roads and bridges, law enforcement, dispute resolution, record keeping, and administration of social services. Like most other aspects of county government in Texas, these 5 primary functions are performed with great variation among the counties. County road and bridge construction and maintenance have traditionally been such important functions of county government that the county commissioners court, those elected officials in charge of county government, are often called road commissioners. County commissioners maintain more than half of the roads in the state, including roughly 134,000 miles of rural roadways and 17,000 rural bridges. Maintenance of these roads and bridges is a major cost for county government. For example, a 20-foot wide asphalt road for lightweight traffic costs a county $45,000 per mile to resurface a road of the same width for heavy trucks costs about $100,000 per mile. Although a 1947 law allowed counties to place their road system under authority of a county engineer, in most counties, roads and bridges remain one of the most important responsibility of the commissioners. Law enforcement's another important responsibility of county government is undertaken by constables and by the sheriff. The sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer within county government. In rural counties with few city police departments, the sheriff may be the major law enforcement official in the county. In addition to law enforcement and the provisions of deputies for the district and county courts, sheriffs are responsible for the county jail and the safety of prisoners. In many counties, operating a county jail is an expensive and major undertaking. On March 1st, 2020, for example, Harris County was guarding and supervising over 9,000 inmates in its county jail, and Dallas County had 5,900. On the other hand, 23 counties had no jails. Overall, there were 68,000 inmates in Texas county jails. Although the law enforcement budget must be approved by the county commissioners, sheriffs often have considerable influence in county government and develop their own law enforcement styles. Traditionally in Texas, the office of constable has been elected official office with limited duties. Constables have served civil court papers and provided bailiffs for justices of the peace. However, some constables have transformed their offices into full-fledged police departments. Some constables' offices have traffic enforcement roles. Some enforce truancy laws, and some even have formed heavily armed tactical units that patrol high crime areas. Since constables are elected officials, they are not subject to much oversight by other public officials, and they tend to function as law enforcement fiefdoms in larger counties in Texas. County district and district attorneys also perform a law enforcement role by prosecuting criminal cases. Usually the district attorneys prosecute more serious criminal cases in the district courts, whereas the county attorneys prosecute the lesser criminal cases in the county courts. In more urban counties, the offices of county attorney and district attorney may be combined into one office that is usually called the Office of Criminal District Attorney. Record keeping is another important function of county government. County clerks keep vital statistics for the county, issue marriage license and birth and death certificates, and maintain records for the commissioner's court and the county courts. Most important, the county clerk is responsible for records relating to property transactions. Sometimes the county clerk also maintains election and voting records. If there is a district clerk, he or she maintains records for the district courts. Though in small counties, this office is combined with the office of the county clerk. Tax records are maintained by the county tax assessor collector, who in many counties also collect taxes. Though in the smaller counties, the sheriff often performs this job. Although in many counties, constitutional amendments have eliminated the office of county treasurer. In those where the office still exists, the treasurer is responsible for receiving and spending county funds. The county auditor now does much of the former work of the county treasurer. There are now 200 county auditors in Texas who are appointed by the county's district judges Not only do they audit the county's funds, but in large counties, they will also often prepare the county budget for the commissioner's court. Counties also have an important role in dispute resolution through their court systems. Civil law is a way to resolve disputes between people, and the justice of the peace court and the county and district courts deal with large numbers of civil disputes as well as criminal matters. County and district attorneys may also represent the interest of the county or state in disputes that involve governmental interests. Finally, counties may perform a social service function. This service provided vary from county to county, but the most important ones involve providing emergency welfare assistance, which may include food, housing, rental assistance, or shelter. Larger counties have health departments to work on the prevention and control communicable diseases. Some counties operate mental health services, and some provide parks, airports, fire protection, and sanitation facilities. One of the most important social services provided by counties is indigent health care. Here's the vocabulary terms for this section. And here's the vocabulary words for the next section. Sorry about that. Sometimes I have to readjust. Numerous county offices, checks and balances, or built-in problems. As with the state government, county governments in Texas involves many elected governmental officials. Some argue that the large number of public officials at the county level is desirable because it creates a strong system of checks and balances, allowing no one official to dominate county government. However, that system of checks and balances comes at a high price in the form of problems in coordinating of governmental activity, much as it at the state level. One of the most important bodies of county elected officials is the County Commissioner Court, which is the main governing unit in the county. Although Commissioner's Court is not a judicial body, it may have gotten its name from the Republic of Texas Constitution, 1836-45, in which the county governing unit consisted of the Chief Justice of the County Court and the Justices of the Peace within the county. The current structure of the County Commissioner's Court, shown in Figure 10.1, consists of a county judge and 4 commissioners. The county judge is elected countywide and serves for 4 years. He or she presides over the meetings of the Commissioner's Court and has administrative powers as well as judicial powers in rural counties. In those counties, the county judge hears a minor criminal cases and handles some civil matters, such as probate, the process by which legal title property transfers from someone who has died to that person's legal heirs and beneficiaries. In larger, more urban counties, the county judge is an administrator only, with the former judicial duties of the office usually performed by probate judges or county court at law judges. Here is the graph of Figure 10.1. I'm sorry, let me pause. There you go. That way you can pause and here is the vocabulary term for the next section. Each commissioner's court also has 4 county commissioners, each of whom is elected from a precinct that encompasses roughly 1/4 of the population of the county. The main responsibility of county commissioners is the construction and maintenance of county roads and bridges. That aspect of commissioners' work is, of course, very important to rural residents. It can be politically controversial and has sometimes been tinged with corruption. The Commissioner's Court also sets the county tax rate. and the county budget. Related to its taxing and budgeting powers is its power to make contracts and pay bills. Other than road and bridge expenditures, perhaps the most important expenditure of most county commissioners' courts is building and maintaining county jails. Health care for people in poverty can be a significant cost for counties as well, along with, in some cases, fire protection and sanitation. Some counties also have costs associated with maintaining libraries and hospitals and providing emergency welfare measures, such as those brought on by natural disasters or fires. The Commissioner's Court can appoint certain county officials, and it can hire personnel as well as fill vacancies in county offices. It also administers elections in the county. The numerous elected officials in Texas counties each have an independent power base. It seems nearly inevitable that tensions would develop between the budgetary powers of the commissioner courts and the needs and desires of other elected county officials. Such disputes among county officials can be mundane, as was the battle between Titus County commissioners and the county attorney over whether the commission could ban the county attorney's dog from the courthouse. The disputes can also be far more serious and acrimonious, such as the litigation between the Galveston County Commissioner and District Court Judge Lonnie Cox over the commissioner's firing of the county court administrator. After winding its way through the state courts, the Texas Supreme Court held that Judge Cox lacked the constitutional and statutory authority to compel the county commissioner to reinstate a county judicial employee as at a specific salary. District court judges could not legislate from the bench, nor could they replace the decision of a legislative body of government. The bitter controversy between the county commissioners and the judge cost taxpayers over $1 million. As Table 10.1 shows, other office holders are elected but at the county level, and still others at the precinct level of the county. There is some variation in the numbers of office holders depending on the county. The challenge of county government. Are some counties too small? Texas is a large, diverse state with great variation among its counties. There is great variation in the number of government officials, the duties of officials, and the services provided by the different county government. Brewster County has a population of only 9,203, but it covers a territory of 6,193 square miles, about the size of Connecticut and Rhode Island combined. Rockwell County, in contrast, has only 149 square miles and a population of 87,809. Although Harris County has a population of 4,441,370, Loving County has a population of only 169. Yet Loving County covers a huge land area, nearly 677 square miles. A small population may create a sense of community and closeness to local government, but it can place a huge strain on county resources when unusual events occur, such as an expensive murder trial or a natural disaster, for example, after suffering from flooding and bad economy. Presidio County, with a population of less than 7,000, ran out of money to pay its bills. Several county phone lines were disconnected for lack of payment, and the county had to cut its budget by 30% and raise taxes in order to continue functioning. Polk County in East Texas, population of about 46,000, estimated that it had unanticipated cost of $200,000 when the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the sentence of Johnny Paul Penry, who had been convicted of stabbing in the stabbing death of a woman in 1979 and sent the case back for another trial. Even with $100,000 in aid from the state to help pay the bill, the cost of this trial represented a tremendous burden. An even more severe situation faced tiny Franklin County, population of 10,600. In 2007, when it needed to come up with a minimum of $250,000 for a murder trial. Since capital murder cases were so rare in the county, the commissioner had no money at all budgeted for such a purpose. As in Presidio County, for small counties such as Polk and Franklin, expenses like these require either major cuts in other budget items or tax increases or both. Very small counties in the Big Bend area of Texas are discovering that they cannot afford to prosecute the drug violations that are too small for the federal government to prosecute. In counties that have Border Patrol checkpoints, relatively minor drug cases have been processed at the county level. Although the federal government has provided some aid funding these prosecutions, but Hudspeth County, population of 3,300, has discovered that for every dollar it gets for handling federal border crimes and seized assets, it costs the county $2 to detain, process, and prosecute the offenders. The cost has gotten so substantial that the county has chosen to no longer prosecute the federal drug cases sent to it. Brooks County, population of 7,200, had previously stopped taking the federal drug cases from its Border Patrol checkpoints because the county found the cost too great, and Kennedy County, population of 400, has recently made the same decision. Part of the problem is that the federal government has reimbursed local authorities only for, and here's the prosecution costs and not for detention costs. For small population counties, that policy imposed a great financial burden. Since detention is the most expensive item in the county budget, counties exist as they do for a variety of reasons. The original goal of making county seats easily accessible by horseback is, of course, no longer pertinent. Other reasons are political. For example, wealthy landowners may have urged the legislature to create counties so that they could control county government and hence the amount of property taxes they might pay. In modern times, there is arguably no practical reason for Texas to have so many counties. Even moderate-sized counties, by Texas standards, may be too small to function adequately in unusual situations. It would take a state constitutional amendment to merge counties so that many of them would have a sufficient population to function efficiently and a sufficient tax base to deliver services adequately. But the issue of county mergers is not one that is on the political agenda. It would likely be a controversial one because of residents' traditional loyalties to a county. Because county office holders would fear losing their jobs, and because voters might feel they would lose control over county government, since a vote in a populous county is less influential than one in a small county. Accountability of county officials. County officials are made accountable to the public through elections. Generally, every 4 years, the voters get a chance to review county officials and make a judgment about their competence, efficiency, ability, and fitness to hold office for another 4 years. One question is whether having elections every 4 years is sufficient mechanism to ensure the accountability of officials. In cases of inefficiency or incompetence, the only alternative to elections for the removal of county officials is rarely used and generally unsuccessful judicial proceedings against an official believed incapable of performing duties. One example of the problems of accountability of county officials involved Susan Hawk, the district attorney of Dallas County. A political superstar, Hawk had been a highly successful assistant district attorney in the county beginning at the age of 24. At 32, she was elected to a state district judge, and in 2014, she resigned from the bench to run against incumbent Democrat Craig Watkins for district attorney. Hawk was the only Republican who won a countrywide race in Dallas County that year. As the newly elected district attorney, Hawk was responsible for running an office with 260 assistant district attorneys and 190 support staff. Even during her campaign, however, she began to have problems due to severe depression and an addiction to prescription pain medications. She became suicidal and paranoid and went into a rehabilitation facility, claiming she was going to have back surgery. After she became district attorney, her paranoia continued and she became manic and forgetful, sometimes making impulsive decisions. She fired top assistant district attorneys, including people who were close associates. By the summer of 2015, she was again suicidal and was planning her resignation when she obtained treatment. After Hawk fired a lawyer who oversaw the budget of the DA's office, the lawyer claimed Hawk had repeatedly tried to misuse public funds. A removal suit was filed against Hawk, but in early 2016 it was dismissed. Hawk's mental health problems were not under control, however, and she was frequently in treatment. Finally, in September of 2016, she resigned, waiting just long enough to prevent an election for her replacement, who in Democratic Dallas County would most likely have been a Democrat. In December of 2016, Governor Abbott appointed a Republican Faith Johnson as Dallas County's first black female district attorney. Johnson lost her re-election bid to John Cruzote in November of 2018 election. The descent of Susan Hawk into depression, drug abuse, and paranoia is a tragedy, but in the process of trying to gain self-control, Hawk damaged the careers of several employees in the district attorney's office and introduced considerable confusion and chaos into the office. Her story may be the most dramatic, but numerous other examples raise concerns about possible lack of accountability on the part of local governmental officials. Dallas County Commissioner John Wiley Price faced an 11-count indictment from the U.S. Attorney on corruption charges. He was alleged to have received $950,000 in payments in money, cars, and land. Following the contentious and lengthy investigation and trial, Price was found not guilty on 7 of the 11 charges. For bribery and fraud in April 2017, federal prosecutors decided not to retry the tax fraud charges in May of 2017. But questions about Price's actions continued to be raised in the media as late as October of 2017. Houston Community College trustee Dave Wilson won his office with a questionable campaign that wrongly suggested to his heavily African American constituents that he was black. Wilson is white, but his campaign leaflets did not show his picture, instead featuring pictures of African Americans that were taken off the internet and shown beside the request, please vote for our friend and neighbor Dave Wilson. One leaflet said Wilson was endorsed by Ron Wilson, who it turns out his cousin in Iowa rather than an African American former state representative who most voters would have assumed was meant. Local officials are supposed to be closest to their electorate, and therefore voters are supposed to be more aware of their strength and flaws. But this actually the case? Do voters have sufficient awareness of local officials when they elect them? And are future elections a sufficient control over behavior of those officials once they are in office? City government in Texas. Politics at the local level is often politics at its most basic, unlike the presidential elections, in which the issues may well involve questions of war and peace, or state elections, which may involve issues such as whether a state should have an income tax in local elections. The most pressing issue may well be potholes in the city streets. Although pothole repair may not seem high in the hierarchy of political concerns, it is exactly such an issue that most directly and routinely affects most people's lives, and thus it becomes a prime issue for discussion among candidates. As mundane as such concerns are, these are the fundamental issues in most local elections because they reflect the needs and expectations that residents have of local government. Here's the vocabulary word for the next section. I hope you can see it. Sometimes it goes blurry. I'm sorry, guys. General law versus the home rule cities. In 2018, there were 1,214 incorporated municipalities in Texas, ranging in size from 18 in Los Yabanes to over 2.3 million in Houston. See Table 10.2. Like county governments, municipal governments are creations of the state of Texas. In the early years of the Republic of Texas, the Texas Congress was responsible for enacting laws that incorporated cities. Article 11, Section 4 of the 1876 Constitution provided for the incorporation of I never get lost. I'm so sorry. Section 4. Incorporation of general law. Cities under 100,000 people, but was lowered to 5,000 in 1909. The number of urban areas grew in the state in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, making the management of local affairs a growing burden on the state legislature. In 1912, the legislature passed the Home Rule Charter Amendment to the Constitution that enabled cities of more than 5,000 inhabitants to adopt charters providing some degree of local self-government. Today, there are 345 incorporated cities with more than 5,000 residents operating under home rule provisions, and an additional 871 operating under general law. Table 10.2 lists the 10 largest of these. In contrast, California has only 121 home rule cities, and Illinois has only 209. The difference between a general law city and a home rule city is crucial not only because of the size of the city, but because of the way in which self-government in the locality operates. Cities and towns of fewer than 5,000 people are chartered by general statute, as was the case for all cities and towns prior to the 1912 Home Rule Amendments. Under the so-called Dillon Rule Doctrine, general law cities and towns may act or organize themselves only as explicitly permitted by statutory law passed by the state legislature. The Constitution also limits what they can do. For example, general law cities may levy, assess, and collect taxes, as authorized by statute. but the Constitution sets a maximum property tax of a tax rate of $1.50 per $100 valuation, compared to the $2.50 per 100 valuation for home rule cities. Home rule cities, on the other hand, work under a charter passed by the citizens. The Home Rule Charter essentially lays down the rules under which a city will operate. The general principle for home rule cities is that cities exercise power under the charter unless the state constitution of the legislator passed through law says otherwise. The state legislature may preempt a particular policy passed by local governments when it perceives that the policy is not in the not in the interest of the state. Preemption has become an increasingly important issue in Texas and the nation over the past few years. See Citizens Guide to this chapter. Home rule charters provide for the form of government that operates in the city and specify the number of members serving on the city's governing body. They also may grant the governing body the power to annex land adjacent to the city, as well as set property tax rates up to $2.50 per $100 valuation. Home rule cities are also constitutionally authorized to borrow money in ways not available to smaller municipal entities. Home rule charters may be constituent with the state constitution and other relevant statutory provisions. For example, the state has mandated that most city elections take place on a date provided by the Texas Election Code. City elections must be conducted under the general guidelines set by the state. Nevertheless, home rule in Texas traditionally has delegated enormous power to local city governments. According to a report by the Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations, the Texas Constitution allows cities more home rule than does any other state. Here's the chart. I hope you can read that. Sorry about that, guys. Preemption and home rule. When home rule cities have substantial power to act independently of state control, the city of Denton discovered that there are limits on local control when home rule comes into conflict with the oil industry and state government in 2014. Denton was the home of 277 gas wells. Concerned about the effects of fracking drilling technique used for gas production, nearly 59% of the voters in Denton passed an ordinance in November 11, 2014, banning further fracking in the city. Immediately, the petroleum industry sued the city over the ban, and the industry was joined in opposition by the Texas General Land Office. In May of 2015, the legislature passed HB 40 preempting the fracking ban. By June of 2015, Denton City Council was forced to repeal the ban. In the brief lifetime of the Denton anti-fracking law, the city spent over $800,000 trying to defend ordinance and oil interests, meanwhile spent over $1 million challenging it. In 2015, fight over Denton's anti-fracking ordinance was only the first round in an intense debate that broke out early during the next legislative sessions over the wisdom of numerous city ordinances. Proclaiming that we are not the United States of municipalities, Governor Abbott led the charge on a variety of initiatives to preempt or set aside local ordinances. Among proposed preemption initiatives were bills banning sanctuary cities in Texas and ending local regulation of ride-hailing services that originally drove Uber and Lyft out of Austin. Another bill that provided tax credit to offset local tree removal fees was vetoed by Abbott as not going far enough. Abbott himself had experienced inconvenience when he tried to remove trees on his property in Austin. The special session of the legislature in the summer of 2017 was dominated by a host of preemption issues. Two popular preemption bills passed: a new bill limiting local regulations of tree removal and a second bill restricting the annexation powers of local government. Others were more controversial and failed to pass, including a bill to requiring transgender people to use the bathroom according to the sex on their birth certificate, a bill limiting the growth of local property taxes. Here's the preemption, and then here is the favorably toward. A bill capping local government spending, a bill speeding up local permit processes, a bill preventing local rule changes midway through local construction projects, a bill preempting local restrictions on mobile devices in cars, a bill prohibiting local government from sending money to Planned Parenthood. Preemption controversies covering a wide range of issues continued during the 2019 legislative session. One estimate identified 62 bills filed under the 2019 session that sought to strike down a variety of local ordinances, including ordinances in San Antonio, Austin, and Dallas, to provide paid sick time to all city employees. The ordinances are now being litigated in state and federal court and likely will get serious pushback in the 2021 legislative session. Another bill, HB 2840, passed the legislature in 2019, creating new rules, making it easier for the public to speak out at local governmental meetings. In the past, many local governments had a person to be heard segment where interested individuals could speak up about an issue under consideration at certain well-defined points in time. Unfortunately, many local governments did not provide for any citizens' input or limited to the input to the beginning or end of a meeting. Under new rules, people can speak out at the beginning of a local government meeting, at the end, or before a vote on every listed item. As Dave Lieber, a consumer watchdog columnist for the Dallas Morning News, noted, HB 2840 is a license to speak up, talk more, get involved, and be a better watchdog. The most important piece of preemption in 2019 took place under the auspices of property tax reform, when the state legislature constrained the ability of local governments to raise property taxes without going to the voters for their approval. See Chapter 11. What was driving this debate over preemption and local self-government? There were many factors, but one stands out: that the growing partisanship in the state legislature, fueled by an aggressive conservative wing of the Republican Party. As noted in earlier chapters, the Democratic Party now dominates many of the large urban areas in the state, but an increasingly conservative Republican Party now controls most suburban, exurban, and rural parts of the state, as well as the executive and state legislature. By expanding state preemption activity, the Republican Party effectively sought to impose its social conservative and free market ideology throughout the state, particularly into urban enclaves controlled by Democrats. Local government and the coronavirus. Many county judges are of particular importance in responding to the coronavirus. At the local level, these offices are given substantial regulatory authority under the Texas Disaster Act, although the decision of these officials can also be overridden by Governor In the early stages of the pandemic, Governor Abbott deferred to the decisions of mayors and county judges. One reason was that the coronavirus wasn't affecting the entire state. It was mostly in urban and suburban areas, although there were cases in rural areas, especially where prisons and meat processing facilities were located. As a result, it seemed reasonable to have local officials deal with the local effects of the pandemic. However, the emphasis on local responses to the pandemic led to a patchwork of regulations. Some cities, for example, had regulations that were stricter than the counties in which they were located. Additionally, some cities across county lines and were subject to differing local regulations. Early in the pandemic, tensions developed among local officials as to what the appropriate response should be or how economic concerns should be balanced against public health concerns. How strict should a shelter in place policies be in a particular locale? How long should local businesses be closed down to prevent the spread of the virus? When and how should these businesses allowed to be reopened? Who should be responsible for making these decisions? County commissioners in various parts of the state believed they were not sufficiently consulted by county judges and demanded a role in the decision-making process. Urban counties had stricter regulations than neighboring suburban counties, which led to claims that contagion was being transported into the cities from suburban dwellers. As the pandemic settled into the state, pressures built to loosen the restrictions because of the economic damage done by the stay-in-place regulations. Republican state officials developed views on the response to the coronavirus that diverged from those of Democratic officials in the cities and urban counties. Pressures among Republican state officials to preempt local public health initiatives increased in the late spring as demands to reopen the economy built. In early May of 2020, Governor Abbott started taking a more active role in imposing directives, which often conflicted with and suspended local regulations. Attorney General Paxton sent warning letters in mid-May to city officials in Austin, Dallas, and San Antonio, and to county officials in Travis, Dallas, and Bexar counties that said they were not in compliance with Governor Abbott's directives. Paxton also wrote that Dallas County could not ban law offices from opening, that masking requirements were invalid, that Austin requirements of remote worship service with a 10-person to a room limit was not allowed, and that local shelter-in-place orders could not be enforced. Abbott banned releasing county jail inmates without money bail if they had been arrested for a violent crime or had previously been convicted of one. Perhaps the oddest repudiation of local action by state officials occurred when Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, and Attorney General Paxton criticized a Democratic district judge in Dallas for jailing a salon owner, Shelley Luther, who had refused to comply with Abbott's business closure directive. In an October 2020 order, Abbott again showed deference to county officials when he issued an order that allowed bars to reopen to 50% capacity. If that reopening was approved by county judges, that decision suggested Abbott may be inclined to return to his initial position of allowing local regulatory decisions making during the pandemic. In the long run, the biggest impact of the pandemic on local government is likely to be financial. The pandemic has led to widespread unemployment and reduced revenues for cities from everything from sales tax to tourism. The losses of revenue have already led to layoffs of local government employees and a reduction of government services, and more layoffs and reductions are expected. Here's the Citizen's Guide. Oops, I'll close in on that so you can read that closer. Here's the vocabulary words. Oops, sorry. Trying to get as close as possible, guys. Forms of government in Texas cities. Texas home rule cities have had three major forms of city government: the mayor-council form, the commissioner form, and the council-manager form. The mayor-council form of government is the oldest. It consists of an elected mayor and city council. The mayor is usually elected from the city in at large election. The council may be elected either at large from a group of single-member districts or a mixture of the two. In the mayor-council form of government, the mayor of chief is the chief executive officer of the city. He or she presides over council meetings and has a variety of appointments, powers. The city council, meanwhile, serves as the legislative body in the city, passing local laws and watching over the executive departments. There have been both strong mayor-council systems and weak ones, depending on the powers given to the mayor by the city charter or state statute. In the strong mayor-council variation, various executive powers such as appointment and removal powers for boards and departments, as well as veto powers, are concentrated in the office of the mayor. These powers enable the mayor to establish effective control over various executive departments in the city and to control the legislative agenda to the city council. In the weak mayor-council variation, these executive powers are much more limited, fragmenting power between the mayor and other elected or appointed officials. Strong mayor systems reflect a perspective that having a strong executive in charge of city government makes it operate more efficiently. In contrast, weak mayor systems diffuse power, with city council members retaining a great deal of power. Advocates of the latter say this system gives a greater voice to the various constituencies represented by the members. The mayor-council form of government is the dominant form of government in most general law cities, although it's considerably less popular among home rule cities. According to a 2017 survey by the Texas Almanac, about 48% of Texas municipalities had mayors but not city managers or city administrators. A second form of the city government is the commissioner form of government. Under the system, the city is run by a small commission composed of between 5 and 7 members, generally elected at large. The commission acts in both a legislative and an executive capacity. As a group, commissioners enact laws for the city. At the same time, each commissioner is in charge of one of the executive departments. One commissioner is also designated as the mayor to preside at meetings. The commission plan, which came to be known as the Texas Idea, reflected a desire to bring the city government good business practices that would somehow escape the squabbles and inefficiency of traditional local government found in the mayor-council form. It was believed that the commissioners, with direct responsibility for operation of various departments, would bring professional management to government at its peak. In 1918, the commission form was used by approximately 500 cities across the country, including 75 cities in Texas. Following World War I, the number of commission form cities decreased by 2,000. No city in Texas had a pure commission form of government, although 26 still claim to have some variation of it. Essentially, the Texas Idea led to the third form of city government found in Texas, the council manager form of government. A city manager replaced the commissioners because a single manager provided the professional management of city government without the squabbles and jurisdictions disputes that naturally occurred with the multiple managers of the various departments in the commission system. As originally envisioned, a city council elected in at-large elections was to be the policy-making body. Council members generally received little or no pay and were intended to be publicly motivated citizens interested in serving the public good, rather than professional politicians. A mayor was selected from among the council members. The city manager was to be a professional manager, public manager who served as the chief executive administrative official in the city. As in the commissioner form of government, the goal of the council manager form was twofold: to free local government and or from the senior side of politics, and to bring administrative expertise to local government. Today, almost 52% of the 1,216 incorporated Texas municipalities have some form of city manager government. Across the United States, it has become the most popular form of government for cities of over 10,000 residents. Today, city council manager systems vary across the state in a number of ways. The desire for professional administration of local government remains high. Most city managers have graduate degrees and are paid high salaries like executive officers in the private sector. But a desire for more political accountability through traditional democratic processes has introduced some changes. The growing ethnic and racial diversity of some Texas cities has forced many political leaders to question the wisdom of freeing local government too much from democratic controls. In most cities, mayors now are elected at large from the population as a whole rather than from among council. Many cities also elect council members from single member districts rather than at large. Many see at large elections as undercutting representation of people of color by diluting minority voters. Only when Dallas moved from an at-large council to one elected from single-member districts in 1991 did people of color come to play a major role in the decision-making processes of city government. But most cities and towns under the council manager system continue to view local political offices as part-time jobs. Mayoral and council salaries remain low, although a few cities such as Austin offer considerably higher salaries. The demand for more democratic accountability in local government will likely continue to lead to more changes in the council manager system of the government across Texas. Balancing professional efficiency in city government with democratic political processes will continue to be a problem as Texas metropolitan areas grow and diversity in the 21st century. Tales of Five Cities. Houston is the largest city in Texas. It has over 2.2 million people and a strong mayor-council form of government. There are 18 elected officials in the city serving concurrent four-year terms, including mayor, a controller, and 16 council members. The mayor serves as the chief executive. Much of the mayor's power stems from the authority to appoint department heads and members of advisory boards. Subject to council approval. The mayor also presides over the city council and has voting privileges on it. The 16-member council is a legislative body composed of 5 at-large seats and 11 single-member district seats. Unlike in most other cities, the controller in Houston is an elected official. The controller is the city's chief financial officer. Besides investing city funds, conducting internal audits of city departments, and operating the city's financial management system. The controller is also responsible for certifying the availability of funds for the city council. Initiatives. In the end, the office of the controller is both a professional and a political position. Not surprisingly, the controller often comes into conflict with the mayor and the city council over important policy issues. Although local politics in Houston is nominally nonpartisan, in recent years it has taken on a partisan flavor. Houston's current mayor is Sylvester Turner, a well-known Democrat who had previously served in the Texas legislature for 26 years and had major responsibility for the state's budget. While in that position, Turner had unsuccessfully sought the mayor's office in 1991 and in 2003, but won in 2015 and was reelected in 2019. He is the second African American to serve as Houston's mayor. San Antonio. San Antonio, which has overtaken Dallas, is the second largest city in Texas, has a council manager form of government. The council is composed of 10 members elected from single-member districts on a nonpartisan basis, plus the mayor, who is the 11th member of this council and is selected at large. All members of the council serve for 2-year terms until an election in 2015 that amended the city charter. The mayor's salary was a paltry $4,040 per year, and other council members were paid $20 per meeting, not to exceed $1,040 per year. Recognizing that service as an elected official in San Antonio had become a full-time job, voters raised salaries for council members to $45,722 a year and a $61,725 for the mayor, currently Ron Nirenberg. The charter amendment was approved by 54.8% of those voting. Council members are subject to recall if 10% of the qualified voters in a district sign a petition of recall and a recall election is successful. The city charter also provides for initiatives and referendums that emerge from the voters. The city manager in San Antonio serves as at the pleasure of the council as the chief executive and administrative official in the city. He or she has a wide-ranging appointment and removal authority over officers and employers in all city departments. The current city manager, Eric Walsh, supervises a budget of $2.9 billion and 12,000 employees. Indicative of the city's manager's central role in running the city is his salary, which in 2019 was $312,000. Dallas also operates under a council manager form of government. Until the late 20th century, city politics had been dominated for years by the white business community. At-large nonpartisan elections tended to elect a council that was relatively united in its understanding of the problems facing the city and its vision of where the city should go. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, however, a bitter struggle over rewriting the city charter divided the city along racial lines. The new charter, which went into effect in 1991, called for a 14-member council elected from single-member districts and a mayor elected at large. Members are limited to serving for 2-year terms consecutively. Under the new charter, membership on the council was transformed as a significant number of African American and Latino members were elected. As in other council manager systems, the power of the mayor in Dallas is weak. The mayor, currently Eric Johnson, presides over council meetings, creates council committees, and appoints members, chairs, and co-chairs. In many ways, however, the mayor is only the first among equals on the council. The council as a whole is the legislative body for the city, approving budgets, determining tax rates, and appointing key public officials, including the city manager, city attorney, city auditor, city secretary, municipal court, judges, and various citizens boards and commissions. The city manager serves at the will of the council and is removable by a 2/3 vote of the members. As in San Antonio, the city's manager powers in Dallas are vast. As the chief administrative officer, the city manager has the power to appoint and remove all heads of departments and subordinate officers and employees in the city subject to civil service provisions. Despite the ideal of removing the city manager from the pressures of political life in Dallas, recent city managers have found themselves forced to accommodate to the reality of increasingly politicized city council. The political pressures emerging from Dallas's single-member district council may ultimately compel the city to re-examine the wisdom of retaining a council manager system. As Dallas learned in the 1990s, efficient government and democratic governance are not as easy at balance as advocates of the council managers system once thought. Austin. Austin is the 11th most populous city in the United States and the fourth most populous city in Texas. Is the seat Travis County and the capital of the state. In the November 2012 elections, Austin I can't pronounce that word, adopted by more than 60% margin a plan to change the method for selecting members of the city council. Under the old system, a mayor and 6-member city council were all elected citywide. A city manager served as chief administrative officer of the city of Austin, continues to have a city manager. However, since 2014, only the mayor is elected citywide. The 10 city council members are elected from single-member districts until this change. Austin was the largest city in the United States whose city council did not include at least some members elected from geographic districts. Over the previous 40 years, Austin voters had rejected district plans 6 times in 2014. However, there was a strong grassroots movement favoring the 10-district plan, with support from broad coalition of groups such as Travis County, Republican Party, and Latino groups. One important reason for the success of the proposal was that it appeared in the November ballot when there was a larger and more diverse group of voters than in the prior 6 elections. The proposal required that the districts be drawn by a commission of citizens chosen through an application process overseen by the city auditor. The first elections under the new system were in 2014. Among the effects of the replacement of at-large districts with single-member districts was increased representation of people of color on the council. 2020, the mayor of Austin was white, as were 6 city council members, 1 African American, and 3 Latinos held the remaining seats on the 10-member city council. El Paso, located on the far western part of the state, has a distinctive culture from its sister cities to the east. Home to over 679,000 people, El Paso is on the border with Mexico, which makes the city a center for international trade. The military is also important to the El Paso economy. Because of the presence of Fort Bliss, El Paso's ethnic composition is quite different from the state's other largest cities or other state as a whole. Only 3.8% of the city's population was African American, far smaller than the proportion of African Americans statewide. However, 80.9% of the city's population is Latino, far larger than the overall proportion of Latinos in Texas. Till 2004, El Paso worked under a charter that provided for a strong mayor and 8 district representatives who ran on a slate every 2 years. Local politics was highly partisan and dominated by the Democratic Party. Turnover was high among all leadership positions between 1989 and 2004. El Paso had 7 mayors because the mayor appointed the chief administrative officer in the city. There were frequent turnovers in the... Here you go. Here's the graph. Professional staff, many felt that the process of city government had become too politicized and lacked professionalism and accountability. While there was much sentiment for charter reform in the community as a whole and among groups such as Blue Ribbon, City Charters, Citizen Advisory Committee, there was no clear advocate for changing the charter. This changed in 2003 when Joe Vortes challenged and then beat the incumbent mayor on a platform that included charter revision, along with 4 other council members who ran on a platform supporting charter change. Vortes was responsible for opening a public dialogue that educated the citizenry and key political leaders in the community. There was no organized opposition to the reform proposal. Some raised concerns about the accountability of an unpopular or ineffective city manager, but these were put to rest for the most part by the proposed revision that enables the council to remove a city manager with the support of 5 council members, with the mayor's approval, or 6 without the mayor's approval. The charter revisions, moving from a strong mayor form of government to a nonpartisan city council manager form, were approved by the voters in 2004. Turnout was low at 8%, although this was typical for local elections in El Paso. Under the new charter, the city manager would report directly to the mayor and city council. Elections would be nonpartisan, and city council members would serve 4-year staggered terms. El Paso was the largest of 24 municipalities in the United States to adopt a manager-council form of government between 1998 and 2004. During the same period, 19 other cities in the United States rejected adopting a manager-council form of government, and 14 abandoned manager-council government for a strong mayor system. Among the large cities that adopted a strong mayor form were Oakland, California, and Miami, Florida. Clearly, this is a considerable disagreement across the United States as to the best form of local government. Different political, economic, and cultural circumstances can lead to cities to go in different directions. But in Texas, the dominant form of local government continues to be the manager-council form, with Houston as the sole holdout for the strong mayor system. This is the end of Chapter 10, Part 1. Thank you.